Today I'm going to talk about how the internet is a mass medium. It's obviously our newest mass medium, and I think we've pretty much come to live our lives in a digital realm. So I want you to think about something first. And we started with the printing press and how that was the first mass medium. And think how much the internet has changed the world, about as much as the printing press did. The printing press opened doors to literacy and scholarship. We had libraries, we had codified laws, things like that. One of my favorite media theorists is Marshall McLuhan, and he wrote a book in 1964, and one of the things that he said in there was, a medium affects the society in which it plays a role, not by the content delivered over the medium, but by the characteristics of the medium itself. So the short version of saying that is the medium is the message. And I definitely think this is true with the internet, which was merely a concept still in 1964 when he wrote that book. Media is available as either a push medium or a pull medium. In a push medium, that's basically when you don't have control of it. You're a passive recipient. Think of the radio in your car. If you have the stock radio, then you only have those few stations that are available where you are geographically that can be broadcast into your car. The television is also a push medium when you're speaking of broadcast television, because if you turn your TV on, you generally only get what's available to you at that time you only get the shows that are available at that time at the channels that are broadcasting that. For example, if you wanted to watch Grey's Anatomy, then it's on Thursday evenings at 9 o'clock, and if you don't record it and you don't have a way to stream it, then you miss it and you don't get to see it. With pull medium, you have a lot more control over it. You actively select it. And I think streaming media is probably a perfect example of that. You get in your car and you turn on your radio, but now your radio is coming through your phone and you get to select the music that you want. You're the active recipient. The internet gives you a virtual world. It's a global presence. Think of all these things listed here. This is probably the most I could think of at one time when I made this slide, but there's so much today that we depend on for the internet. We read, we look at photographs, we look at videos, we play games, we listen to music, we watch television and film. You can actually make telephone calls, video conferences, email, and it's a three-dimensional world because we can hyperlink and hop around wherever we want to go. The internet is defined right here, a decentralized network of computer networks. And I have a video that I'm going to talk about the history of it. But I want you to know that the term information superhighway was defined by President Bill Clinton. And that's definitely what it is. We can go pretty much anywhere we want to go, and we can share anything within our legal means that we want to share. However, no single entity owns the internet or governs its use. All right, this is a question for you. So when you think about this, since this is a course about mass media and society, when it comes to technology, media, and society, which of these statements is true? Media influences technology, but not society. Technology created media, but society has nothing to do with these. Technology, media, and society are bound and cannot be separated. Or society influences media, but is not connected to technology. Now take a moment and think about it. I'm going to pause a moment to give you a little bit of time here. All right, think about it. As far as media, if you've tried the exercise yet where you go a day without media, you probably experienced extreme anxiety. We can't go without it. We can't go without our technology, and as a society, this is true. It's been proven. So, in essence, technology, media, and society are bound and cannot be separated is the correct answer to this. So some of the terminology that I want to make sure you understand for this. An IP address or an IP number is when you send a message or request information on the internet, your computer sends a packet of data with the sender's and receiver's addresses attached. There are special computers that are called servers and routers that direct the data through the internet. The World Wide Web is not the internet. It's an element and it's used, it depends on the internet to work. So the web is actually a library of billions of pages of information that are stored on what are called web servers that are connected to the internet. The pages are written using hypertext markup language, HTML, and it's actually a hyperlink is a link that you'll see that you actually click on it with your pointer or your mouse and it hops to it, it jumps to it. Then you use what's called a browser, which is a computer program that you run on your computer or you run on your device, and that uses a web address or a URL to request a page. The request is routed through the internet to the correct server, and then that page is sent back to your computer. And it happens so quickly that you don't even really think about it. Web pages are written using hypertext, and hypertext links one web page to another. Web pages contain text prepared in a computer language called HTML. Hypertext links special words or phrases, or sometimes even images, to other sections of the document or to other documents. So clicking on the link takes you to the linked page. Today, many web pages are based on a scripting language, which actually generates this HTML code. That's how things like WordPress work. Because of this, developers have continued to make things like WordPress, which are actually called content management systems or CMS. And these programs allow publishing, editing, as well as maintenance from within a central interface. Some other examples might be Joomla or Drupal. We all know what Google is. It's become almost a regular word in our vocabulary. I'm going to go Google that. Or when your teacher says, get out your phone and Google something. It's become just a word in our language, but it actually refers to a search engine. And how they work is you enter a keyword, and the search engine, which is actually located on a web server, makes a link or makes a list of hypertext. When you enter keywords, the search engine, which is located on a server, makes a hypertext list of web pages, and you have the words you're looking for. It also ranks pages as it tries to put them in the order that's going to help you the most in what you're looking for. So if you enter the words team sports, it'll give you a list of millions of results from within that search engine, and the engine tries to place the most relevant pages at the top of the list. Different search engines do this in different ways. For example, it might check if all the words appear and how many times they appear within a particular web page. In the 1960s through the 1970s, ARPANET, which was commonly thought of as the predecessor to the Internet, was created by the U.S. Department of Defense's Advanced Research Projects Agency, or ARPA. That's hence where that comes from. It was the first fully operational packet switching network, and it was designed to facilitate communication between ARPA computer terminals, and this was during a time when computers were far too expensive and far too large for widespread usage. Although the conception of the idea behind ARPANET began as early as 1962, the first stable link between multiple computers through the ARPANET didn't happen until 1969, which was 10 years after the first conceptual network architectural models were initiated independently by RAND Corporation's Paul Baran and Donald Davies. Though a primary element of pushing the creation of the ARPANET was the ever-present concept of humanity's continual evolution and technological advancement, there were single and practical concerns that also undergirded the development of ARPANET. At that time, ARPA was a primary source of funding for computer development and research. And during this early computing age, computers were incredibly expensive to make and operate, and they were also separated by distance and purpose, which forced a single user who wanted to access multiple operational functions and information needed to physically travel to the site of these other computers. So, one of the practical elements that necessitated the development was the need to efficiently link multiple computers, and that would allow these different computers and data without that cost of travel and time. Not to mention, ARPA was an agency of the Department of Defense, so part of the motivation, especially during that time period, was related to the desire of the U.S. military to develop a survivable communication structure in the event of a nuclear attack. After about a decade of closed computer network, ARPANET transformed into the openly networked internet of the modern age. The first linked computers were actually tested at 4 universities: Stanford, UCLA, UCSB, and the University of Utah. The 1970s saw the first linking to satellites, and in 1972, the TCP/IP protocol was introduced, and this allowed diverse computers to use the internet. By 1972, it had turned into a high-speed electronic post office. In 1989, it was renamed the Internet, and as I mentioned before, was described as the information superhighway by President Bill Clinton. By 1991, the Internet had grown to include 5,000 networks in over 36 countries, serving about 700,000 host computers and 4 million people. In 1985, the first domain was registered. A domain name is actually what you call up. For example, we would call up, for me, my own website is mschultz.net, but that's actually an IP address and its number, so it would be like 174.29.26.74, and then you give it an alphabetical name because it's far easier to remember than trying to remember yet another number. About 1989, again, something else that was significant was there was a company that started offering TCP and IP network services to businesses, so it moved outside of that military scientific use. Tim Berners-Lee and his colleagues developed a shared format for hypertext documents, which was named the Hypertext Markup Language, or HTML as we know it more commonly. In addition to HTML, Berners-Lee and others created the Uniform Resource Locator, or what we call the URL. And that's your standard address format that you could specify the computer being targeted and the type of information being requested. URL and HTML significantly increased the possibility of interaction between users and networks across the internet. URL also made different internet services accessible to all users employing the system. In 1993, we had our first graphical browser, which was called Mosaic. A browser is a visually based system for representing computer commands and data on screen. I think we are all familiar with what a computer browser is. I don't think I need to spend too much time on that. In 1995, Bill Gates authored what's now a famous memo called the Coming Internet Tidal Wave. By 1995, the bulk of U.S. internet traffic was routed through interconnected network service providers, and Microsoft Windows was launched. 1995 was also a very eventful year as far as formation of contemporary internet culture. We saw the launch of Amazon, Yahoo, eBay, and Microsoft launched its browser Internet Explorer. In 1990, and I looking at the slide, I should mention that it also created Java, which was one of the first programming languages, which was created by Sun Microsystems. In 1996, the U.S. Congress passed the Communications Decency Act, which is seen as a direct assault by censors on the ideals of free speech and information as promoted online. Congress passed this act in response to a perceived public concern about the increased availability of pornography and other graphic and controversial material made possible by the spread of the internet. The Communications Decency Act, or the Telecommunications Reform Act, was actually an attempt by the U.S. government to extend congressional oversight of laws aimed at regulated radio and television to the internet. John Perry Barlow responded with his now famous essay, A Declaration of Independence for Cyberspace. Barlow's essay is an impassioned declaration of cyberspace and the internet as realms of freedom and liberty that shouldn't be subjected to the authority of national governments. We also had our first viral video, which was the dancing baby.
Ooga chaka, ooga 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 chaka, ooga 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 chaka, ooga 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 chaka, ooga ooga ooga. I can't stop this feeling deep inside of me. Girl, you just don't realize what you do to me.
There was probably about enough of that, wasn't it? In 1997, Netflix started sending DVDs to people's homes. You would go on their website, you would order what you wanted, and the next day it would come in a little red envelope. You'd watch it and you'd send it back. And it cost about the same as it costs now if you go to like Redbox, like $1, $1.50. However, the problem was people often forgot to send them back. In 1998, Google launched. It was founded by Sergey Brin and Larry Page, and it was specifically developed to promote and oversee this new search engine because they wanted to rival Yahoo. In 1999, the dawn of internet music and video piracy controversies rose with the introduction of the Napster file sharing software developed by Sean Fanning, who was a college student. And that same year, the internet encountered its first malicious computer virus capable of automatically copying and sending itself to every email address listed in the infected user's address book. That shows the timeline of the internet. It's very long, so I'm going to click on it and we're going to look through it a little bit. You have to zoom in on it. All right, and this just sort of goes through what I've talked about already as far as a timeline, and I'll make this available for you on the class portal so that you can look at this because it gives you a really nice graphical timeline of the things that I just talked about, as well as several other that perhaps I didn't feel were pertinent, but perhaps are interesting for you.